The Italian Wine Podcast is the community-driven platform for Italian wine geeks around the world. Support the show by donating at ItalianWinePodcast.com. Donate €5 or more and we'll send you a copy of our latest book, My Italian Grape Geek Journal, absolutely free. To get your free copy of My Italian Grape Geek Journal, click Support Us at ItalianWinePodcast.com or wherever you get your pods. Grazie mille. Official media partner, the Italian Wine Podcast, is delighted to present a series of interviews and highlights from the 2023 Wine2Wine Business Forum, featuring Italian wine producers and bringing together some of the most influential voices in the sector to discuss the hottest topics facing the industry today. Don't forget to tune in every Thursday at 3 p.m. or visit theitalianwinepodcast.com for more information.
This is Francesco Minetti. This is called the Welcome Tasting Room, and he's the boss of Welcome. So he's just going to kick off this tasting room.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I'm very honored to be here today. And we are Welcome. We are a strategic communication agency specialized in the international promotion of wine. And so it's a great honor to sponsor this tasting room. This is some kind of experiment, I would say, because it's the first time that at wine2wine, great magazines, mainly from the US, actually try to explain what is the method, what is the philosophy, and what is the scoring process. So today we are starting with wine and spirits. The tasting session will be chaired by Stephanie Johnson. Hello. And they are going to taste with you 3 wines, completely blind. So it's going to be, I think, an interesting experiment also to get more awareness and knowledge about this holy grail of the wine communication, so the scoring system and the ratings. So enjoy the tasting. And Stephanie, please.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, everybody. It's a nice way to start out, Wine2Wine, with a little bit of wine. Just a little bit first about me. I started out in book publishing. I had a whole other career before I got into wine. And then I did the WSET program all the way through diploma, and then started at Wine and Spirits in 2013 and became the Italian wine editor in 2016. And since then, I've worked exclusively in Italian wines. At Wine and Spirits, this is us. A few of our magazines. I don't know if you guys have seen it. We taste everything blind, and in this tasting today, we wanted to kind of give you a little peek under the hood of how we do our tasting panels and how we talk about wine in those panels and which wines get through them, and then how they get to the ultimate, which is getting scored and getting into the magazine, because not all of the wines that we are sent actually get reviewed and in the magazine. So what you have in front of you, just to start with, is 3 Etna Rosso wines, okay? They're numbered 1, 2, and I think on your table it says water, but it's not. It's the 3rd wine, okay? So just remember that, and your table goes 1, 2, 3 in the front, okay? And 1 and 2 are 2020 Etna Rosso. Number 3 is 2019. Okay, usually at the magazine we would try to taste all the same vintages, but we have 2 vintages in this one. Just a little bit about Wine and Spirits. We started in 1982. Joshua Green is our publisher. He was then, he still is now. He was the founder. We are independently owned. We are not part of any corporate entity. We do 4 print issues a year, winter, spring, summer, fall. And we taste about 11,000 wines a year. We have a staff of critics that kind of cover regional areas. And then we have a robust website as well, where our reviews are posted and a lot of our content. And we still believe in long-form journalism. So we do a lot of feature articles on different regions and different aspects of wine. But really probably one of the most key things to keep in mind about Wine and Spirits is that our primary audience is the trade. wine trade, okay? Sommeliers, wine buyers, importers. We have developed it kind of determines our content, but also our content determines our audience. Okay, so our approach is really kind of geared towards people in the trade, and then about 75% of our readers are in the trade in some way, and then the rest, the consumers, tend to be people who are have a good amount of wine knowledge. It's not just your average consumer. So that is who we're talking to. And that really, as I said, makes a difference in how we approach our content. For example, in the spring issue every year, we do what's called the restaurant issue, where we focus a lot on restaurants and have a dialogue with sommeliers all around the country about their wine lists, what they're selling, what trends they're seeing. And so we have deep connections within that community all around the country. We involve the wine trade in our tastings. So in our tasting panels, this is why we have my two colleagues here who are sommeliers from the United States. They sit in on panels, blind panels, and they taste with us. And part of that is to just keep in our heads what is relevant to our audience, what wines are relevant to the people who would ultimately buy them. And of course, as you know, they're the gatekeepers, right? They're the ones that are, kind of setting the tone, and other people look to them to say, they're tastemakers, right? We have it's a two-step process, really, that has developed over decades, really, in terms of the way we taste wines. As I said, everything is blind. We have a staff of a tasting director and tasting interns who prepare everything, so we never see the bottles. That's why I never know what labels look like. And the reason for this is when Joshua Green started the magazine back in 1982, he knew he was going to have to take advertising to make a go of it, but he needed to figure out a way that this could really be unbiased presentation of product reviews, right? So the way we do it is, step one is a critic like myself would lead a tasting panel with a number of sommeliers, 2 or more, usually. And we sit and we taste maybe usually about 30 to 35 wines at a time, all similar, from similar appellation, vintages. And we taste blind, we go around and we vote. Would you recommend this wine or would you not? And the way that they decide that is, basically within the context of what you know about Etna Rosso 2020 or 2019, would you recommend this wine to someone, a friend, a colleague, and would you drink it with them? Because we don't want people just recommending wines because they think other people might like that, but I really don't think it's that good. That's step one. The wines that then pass the first cut, basically, I go back immediately and retaste again, blind, the same day. And then those are the wines that pass, and I write my notes. And then after I have scored and written a note, I get the key sheet that tells me what the wines were. And then I might do a little more research to fill out the note, okay? So the scores are really it's a sign of our level of enthusiasm for a wine, okay? This is not a scientific process. We actually specifically ask the somms not to use some kind of, court of sommelier grid or something. That we're really trying to get a sense from them of, would they recommend this wine and in what context? Okay. So I'm going to just introduce our panelists, and then we're going to go through, and you guys should start tasting the wines, by the way, so that, when we get to the portion, which we're getting to quickly, you can kind of have those questions in your mind. Would you recommend these wines, and in what context? And then kind of a level of enthusiasm also, which is really what the score means. So this to my right here is Celia Erickson. She is originally from Atlanta. She's the daughter of two chefs. She went to Cornell University in upstate New York and did a hospitality degree. And then she went through a wine program in Napa, affiliated with the Culinary Institute of America. She's been in New York for about 10 years, and she's currently the wine director for the Delicious Hospitality Group, which includes 5 different restaurants within the metro area of New York. And then to her right is Katharine Hooper. Katharine grew up in Chicago. She went to the University of Minnesota, which is where I'm from, and she moved to New York to become a filmmaker, but fell in love with wine while she was working at Italy. And she is now the wine director at a restaurant called 1/5 and has been there for about a year and a half. So what we're going to do is, if everybody has tasted the wines, we tasted them prior to sitting down here so that we wouldn't have to do it now. And just so you know, none of us have seen the wines. We don't know what they are, and no one else is going to know, okay? And we really want to keep this blind and completely, we want people to feel comfortable saying what they really feel about the wine without feeling like they have some kind of, it could be embarrassing if they run into the producer. So we really want to keep that, blind as possible. And so, and that's what we look for in our panels, is just a real honest reaction from the somms. And you'd be surprised sometimes when we reveal the wines, people thought they had a certain impression about a producer, and it's very different after they find out, after they've tasted it blind. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, and this is what we would do in our panels, I would go around and I would say on a first round, yes or no, would you recommend or would you not, within a flight of the wines. And then once we've each voted, then we talk about the ones that pass, or sometimes the ones that don't pass, if it's really interesting. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start with wine number 1. Again, it's a 2020 Etna Rosso. I said yes. Celia?
I said yes.
Okay. Katharine?
I also said yes.
Okay. All right. Number 2 is another 2020 Etna Rosso. Celia?
I said soft pass.
Soft pass, so kind of a mild yes, but less enthusiastic.
I'm a soft no.
Okay. And I said yes. Number 3, Katharine?
I'm a no.
Okay. Celia?
I give that a pass.
You said yes. Okay. I also said yes. Okay. So that is very typical. There's usually a really mixed reaction to wines. And what we would then do is go through and talk about them and why they said yes or no. Sometimes people change each other's minds. And sometimes a wine that didn't initially pass, people can talk others into it because they make a point about it that maybe we didn't consider. So for number 1, Celia, what was your take on that wine?
Yeah, I thought the wine had just a really lovely sort of like lean structure. I thought the finish on it was lengthy. I really got a typicity of that volcanic minerality in the wine. I did think the acidity was just a little high, but I think with food, I thought it was a pleasurable wine.
Okay. Katharine?
I really love the nose on this wine. I got a lot of complexity from it. I really loved wine number 1. I got a lot of complexity on the nose, from balsamic and tar to rose hip. I thought that it was very expressive in the way that I would hope Etna Rosso to be. Definitely on the fresher side of things, but to me it fell very much within the range of typicity.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. For me, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. To me, it was. I thought these wines were really, really different, but this one kind of hit to me the midpoint. It was like a good introduction. It had the volcanic character, but it had a lot of freshness, and you got that sort of savory edge to it also, that you get the volcanic character of it, but it's not overwhelming. So I thought it was a good balance. Okay, number 2 was a little less enthusiastic. Katharine, what was your take? You said no on that one.
I did. I went back and forth a little bit. For me, the reason I hesitated was I could see the texture and the tannin structure coming around in about 5 years, maybe 10. But on the nose, this is so hyper savory in the world of like it smells like a whole beef stew to me. But including then like cooked vegetable. And to me, that's something that I didn't really see changing in the future. I think that's going to be a part of this wine, and to me, it felt off.
Okay. Celia?
Yeah, I thought it was super savory and very gamey, which I thought in the context of tasting it on its own was a little hard. I could see, I gave it a soft pass because I thought, thinking about some of my guests in the restaurant do want something that's a little bit heavier. I think this is something that I would recommend in my restaurant that has multiple Etna Rossos bottlings, because I think it does show a nice diversity of what's coming out of Etna. But on a restaurant where I only have one space for an Etna Rosso, it would not be my choice.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. I was similar, like it's pretty intense, right? It's a lot of that tar and smokiness and gaminess and savory aspects. To me, it felt like a wine that was maybe either had older vines or had more like a lower elevation, like a Feudo de Mezzo or something, like just that always has that kind of beefy, brawny character. And it's a bit challenging, I think, for American palates. It's pretty intensely volcanic. So yeah, it would have to be in the right context. I would pass it because I actually think it's a really interesting expression of Etna and certainly a legitimate one, but it is not for everybody. And number 3, Celia, you said yes.
Yeah, I thought the rosy finish on this wine was really lovely. I thought it had a nice balance of acidity and tannin. It was a little ripe in fruit character. It was sort of like cherry candy almost. But I felt like it definitely had a place.
Okay. And Katharine, you were a no?
Yes, for me, the nose almost felt more like a whiskey than a wine. Just very, very oak forward. I got a lot of booze on the nose, a lot of worn leather, vanilla. But what also fascinated me was it almost felt like structure in reverse, where I got all of those really pretty softer sides, like in the aftertaste, and then I got like all of the kind of more structural things on the nose almost, it felt. So to me, it didn't feel very typical.
Right, okay. And I had the same notes about the oak. Like you could feel the oak, you could feel the sticky tannins, that kind of resinous quality, that sweetness. It just felt like the volcanic character had been kind of polished out a bit by some kind of oak influence. But I did think I got also the pretty florals, and I felt like it's a wine that I wouldn't serve now, I wouldn't sell now. I think it needs a few years to integrate. But I think that for me, the underlying structure and stuffing is there, and I think it can be really pretty, but not right now, just in a few years. And it actually felt to me less, like I felt like number 2 was almost a little more evolved than number 1. I mean, it was showing more kind of the dried fruit character, and whereas this one still felt quite fresh. So then what would happen now? So basically, all 3 of these wines had a majority of yes votes. So they would all pass. And then I would go and retaste them again afterwards. Sometimes I taste them over several days. I'll come back to the office the next day, and I will ask the staff to save some because I want to see how it evolves over several days. And then I will do a score. I'll finalize a score, and then at the end of the whole tasting cycle, when I've tasted all the Etna Rossos, I'll get the key and I'll find out what the wines were. So that is how we do it. And again, I think that process, when sommeliers come and taste with us and see how we're doing it, I often get the comment, well, that's actually a really fair way to do it. Because, we all know, like when you're sitting down and you see a really prestigious label in front of you, it can kind of sway your views on a wine, and you can give it either more of the benefit of doubt, or you may not give it the benefit of the doubt because you have a previous impression that maybe wasn't so positive. So we feel like this is the best way for us to give unbiased reviews, and we feel like that has built a lot of credibility for us in the sommelier community in the United States. So that's really all we had to say. And I can talk, I was going to ask Celia and Katharine to just talk a little bit briefly about their particular operations, and then you guys can ask questions. So Celia, do you want to talk about Delicious?
Sure, yeah. So we have 4 different restaurants in New York City, and then a spot outside of the city. And each one operates a little differently. We have different clientele at each of the restaurants, and the amount of Italian wine changes based on the location as well. We have a restaurant called Bar Pasquale, which is a Sicilian-focused restaurant. So that restaurant, we try to keep at least one Sicilian white by the glass, one Sicilian red, one Sicilian rosé, and that a category like Etna makes up a significant portion of our wine list. Whereas a region like Barolo or Barbaresco or Tuscany will just have a smaller piece of the pie for that wine list and how it operates. All of our restaurants do also include a really heavy component of French wines, particularly Burgundy and Champagne. But it varies just a little bit based on the clientele. So Bar Pasquale is typically a younger clientele, people who are a little less wine savvy, but they're a little bit more open to exploring new things. So when I'm selecting wines for that restaurant, I do look outside of just classic producers and classic regions and classic varietals. If there's someone new and up and coming that I think is delivering something of really incredible value and really punches above its weight, I really look towards putting wines in that category there. Whereas our restaurant Charlie Bird is definitely a little bit more classic in expression. It has a very heavy Burgundy presence on the wine list. So when I'm selecting Italian wines for that list, I'm looking at wines that can match the sort of presence of well-known Burgundy producers. Because sometimes you're talking to someone, they said, "Well, I really, I love this producer from Burgundy," and you're like, "Well, there's this producer in Piedmont that's doing really incredible things and has this lovely elegance. Let me introduce you to that." So it's finding different categories. So in Charlie Bird, we're looking for wines that are a little bit more classic in expression and really hit sort of those major points there. Yeah.
Katharine? Yeah. So at 1/5, we do have a number of domestic selections. We look at the relationship between the United States and Italy as it pertains to wine. Of course, we have champagne selections because we are human. But then also the Italian side I take very seriously. I've been working in Italian wine for about 10 years. So for me, I almost have in mind a kind of bullseye in terms of the weight of what I consider to be more of our classic, predictable side of the list, and then also pushing some boundaries. So my first kind of criteria when I'm buying Italian wine, or really any wine, is, does it make me happy to drink? And if the answer is no, it has no place. I think there is simply too much good wine being made in order to have really any kind of fluff on the list. I think it's unnecessary. But at the same time, I, again, almost have a kind of bullseye nesting egg kind of approach. So there will always be a core list of very well-known producers, probably with verticals, things that are very familiar, but I am almost more hard on those wines than almost anything else, because to me that is sort of the burden of representation of what is classic Italian wine. So, for example, several different kinds of Etna Rosso, from something that's very light and elegant to something that would satisfy someone looking in that price point who's maybe more accustomed to drinking something like a Cabernet or a Syrah. So certainly I wouldn't expect a grape like Sangiovese to perform the way that Cabernet does, but at the same time, the burden of the wine team is taking somebody who maybe is not very familiar with Italian wine, saying something like, oh, I normally drink Cabernet or Pinot Noir. I hear pretty much the 4 same varieties all day long. And how do we read between those lines and say, okay, you're telling me Napa Cabernet, but I'm looking at you and I think maybe there's some room to bring you somewhere a little bit new. So why don't I introduce you to this other really lovely full-bodied red wine that's going to drink very, very similarly, but at the same time, maybe is a grape you've never heard of. So there's a leap of faith that has to happen on the part of the guest. 99% of the time, they're willing to go on that adventure. I think, especially in New York, we're very, very blessed with a very trusting and open clientele, versus going back home to the Midwest and, convincing my family to spend $20 on a bottle of wine. So that is really, I think, the blessing and curse of American wine is the diversity of familiarity and knowledge. So you really, I think, have to look very specifically at each market and say, okay, am I looking to broaden horizons and maybe have something that goes towards a more metropolitan area where people are exposed to more different things? Or do I want to just make something, not just, it's very, very noble to take a variety in a region that are already fairly well known and just go very, very precise and very deep.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's give it up for Stephanie Johnson, Katharine Hooper, Celia Erickson.
Listen to the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Himalaya FM, and more. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. Until next time, cin cin.